all you beauties and beasties out there. I'm DF, and welcome to Beauties and Beasts, a podcast of all things Beauty and the Beast and every other related fairy tale. I hope you're all staying safe out there in this trying time. If you're not, if you're marching out there like an idiot, then go home. And seriously, I'm really mad how this is happening in Michigan, especially because I'm from Michigan. We actually have a good lady in charge, and everyone is giving her BS. It's very sad. This coronavirus is real, people. People are dying. So go home, all right? Okay, now that that's out of the way, today's topic was suggested by longtime Dragon Prince patron, Anime Guy 1101, and has actually been on my list for a while. Now, typically in folktales, when you have a beastly or animal bride or groom, it's a prince or a princess under a curse, and that curse can only be broken by an act of true love for another, or true love's kiss, something along those lines. And in those stories, the human love interest, aka the beauty character, gets to know the prince or princess as the beast or animal. And then when the spell is broken and that prince or princess becomes human again, they typically live happily ever after. However, there is one tale in which this is not the case, and at least in its original form was a lot more tragic. And that story comes from Tchaikovsky's famous ballet, Swan Lake, which, believe it or not, was initially a flop when it first performed, like Tchaikovsky's other ballet, The Nutcracker, which we had discussed in the Christmas special a few months back. Ironically, these two ballets, which were failures in their time, are the most performed ballets today. So, there you go. Critics aren't always right. It's too bad Tchaikovsky never lived to see his success. It's pretty sad. It just goes to show that not all stories have happy endings, in real life and in fairy tales. Alright, before we begin, as usual, I'd like to thank my $5 plus patrons, Anime Guy 1101 and Tyrannosaurus Venom, and Dead as a Doe. Thank you for your continuing support, especially in this trying time. And you may have noticed that this podcast channel has a new logo, graciously designed by Dragon Princess patron Dead as a Doe, and is being used with her permission. I always wanted to put a rose in the logo, and I myself am not very good at drawing, and I'm so glad that she included it. It looks very beautiful, so thank you so much. You too can become a patron by clicking the green button in the right-hand corner of the screen if you're listening on Podbean, the red button if you're listening on the Podbean app, or you can follow the link in the description below if you're listening on YouTube. Just $1 a month will make all the difference. I really recommend the $3 or $5 tier if you want access to some extra content, if you are bored at home and need some entertainment. And this includes bonus movie reviews, book reviews, and episodes on writing advice. But if you are to spend your money on anything, I recommend checking out my merchandise on Redbubble under the username DisneyFanatic23. That's DisneyFanatic23. Face masks are now available on Redbubble. For every mask sold, Redbubble will donate one mask to Heart to Heart International. And just know that these are for general public use only and not for medical use. I myself have already sold 7 masks, which means 7 more masks will be going to people who need it. And I myself will be gifting 1 mask each to my $10 plus patrons as a reward for their generosity. Contact me if you haven't arranged for your mask yet. And podcast merch as well as Pride. My Redbubble page includes podcast merch as well as Pride flags, as next month is Pride Month. And it would be recommended that you order your mask now so that you could show off your pride while also keeping yourself and others safe. May not be able to organize a march this year, but you can still march through the grocery store with your pride flag on your face. And I've been adding some new flags to the collection, so if you don't see your flag available, let me know and I'll try to remedy that as soon as possible. Just do your part in any way you can to help us get through this very difficult time. Remember, if you are not a patron, minimum cost of any questions or comments you want read aloud in the stream is 5 gold beans, which is about 4 cents. Please be sure to keep your questions and comments relevant to the topic at hand, and save any other questions for the end of the stream. I will be holding a small charity stream on Sunday, May 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. raising money for No Kid Hungry, a nonprofit organization which helps feed kids from low-income families as they can't get their lunches from school during the pandemic. And I will be taking voice requests and answering questions, as this is for charity. Patron perks will not apply to this stream, to that stream on Sunday. If you prefer to save your gold beans for that charity stream, I completely understand. Just have them ready for Sunday. All right, now on to the topic at hand. No one knows the exact origins of the libretto from the Swan Lake ballet. If you don't know, a libretto is pretty much the story that they're using for the ballet, or of its author, though there have been theories. Some speculate that the story is derived from German and Russian folktales, including The White Duck and The Stolen Veil by Johann Karl August Musaus. Man, I'm so rusty on my German. The composer, Pietro... all these names. The Russian composer, Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky, first composed the ballet in 1875 and it first premiered at Moscow's Bolshoi Theater on March 4th in 1877. Though most performances base their choreography on the 1895 revival, as there were no notes of the original production, as was originally criticized as its music being far too complicated for the dancers to keep up with, and it wasn't revived until after Tchaikovsky's death. Now, most people may be somewhat familiar with the story, with the 1994 animated film The Swan Princess, or the 2003 Barbie film, which uses most of the ballet's music. But the original story has been lost in adaptation over the centuries, even altered in ballet productions for those who don't favor the original ending, because it is actually quite tragic. What I will be summarizing right now is the libretto of the 1895 revival as translated by Professor Roland John Wiley. All right, so the first act opens up with a young Prince Siegfried who has just turned 21 and is celebrating his coming of age with his friends. And, why do I have this music here? Oh god, go away, music. yeah, there we go. Okay, that was just some random pop there. I don't know how that got on there. Okay, so the prince has just turned 21 and he's celebrating with his friends in a park outside the palace. His mother, the queen, insists that it's time that he got married, as he's in that time of life, though the prince is not quite ready to give up his bachelor life. She's arranged for a ball for the next day and invited all the princesses far and wide to come, and he must choose a bride by the end of the night. After doing some partying and getting drunk, evening falls and a flock of swans fly overhead. The prince and his friends decide to end the day with a nice little hunt. You know, guy stuff. In the next scene, there's a tableau of a band of white swans swimming in a lake, with one swan wearing a crown leading them at the front. The prince and his friends prepare to fire at the swans, but they swim away. The prince's friend Benno ends up alone and witnesses the swans transforming into beautiful maidens. Terrified, the companions are about to shoot until the swans' leader, Princess Odette, appears, and the prince, struck by her dazzling beauty, tells his friends to stand down. Odette, the princess, then explains how they are all under the spell of a wicked genie or sorcerer, as some versions say, named von Rothbart, and they are cursed to be swan by day and human by night. Yes, wicked genie. I understand the confusion there. And von Rothbart watches over them in the form of an owl, sometimes a crow, sometimes a raven, or some other predatory bird. I finally have a use for that sound effect. Little do they know that he is listening to them now in the form of an owl. Only when a person who is not worn any love before can free them by falling in love with Odette. And horrified that he could have killed her, the prince breaks his bow, and this touches Odette. After they do some dancing, the prince falls more and more in love with Odette and vows to kill von Rothbart and free her. But Odette says that the destroyer of the evil genie will come only at the moment when some infatuated man sacrifices himself out of love for Odette. And he says that he is ready to die for her sake, after they've just met. And he requests that she come to his mother's ball where he is supposed to take someone for his bride. And he claims that he will tell everybody that she will be his bride. And the prince vows never to betray her, but Odette warns that the genie will do everything in his power to stop him. Dawn breaks, and Odette and her attendants transform back into swans. Alright, and then intermission and second act. The ball begins. The prince is presented by many potential brides from all around the world. Spanish dances, Russian dances, etc., ballet stuff. But the prince is determined to marry only Odette. And then von Rothbart enters in his human form, the evil genie, with his daughter Odile, who looks exactly like Odette. Now, some say Odile is naturally Odette's lookalike. Otherwise, her father had made her look like Odette with magic. This one is actually more likely. And Odile is dressed to look like a black swan, in contrast to Odette, the white swan. Always a dual role for the ballerina, just a little tidbit there. And you can see it in the way that the ballerina dances in both roles, the contrast between the girls' personalities. Naturally, the prince believes Odile to be Odette and goes to dance with her. And Odette, as a swan, meanwhile, appears at the window in an attempt to warn the prince. But the prince doesn't hear or see her as he is too captivated by fake Odette's beauty. At the end of the night, Siegfried chooses Odile as his bride and announces a vow of eternal love in front of everyone. But then, seeing Odette in the window, he realizes that he has been tricked far too late. The vow has already been made, and Odette is to remain forever a swan in von Rothbart's power. And he and Odile disappear into the night, triumphant, and the prince flees in despair. Then we go to the final act. Odette returns to her Swan Lake and her attendants, and she is deep in despair, thinking that it would be better if she drowned herself in the lake than to live without the prince. And before she can do that, the prince runs in and begs forgiveness, saying that he had only made the vow because he had thought Odile was Odette, and that it was truly her that he loved. Well, yeah, you can't exactly blame him for making a mistake. I mean, no one suspects an evil twin to come into play. No one does. Odette forgives him, but then the evil genie Rothbart appears, demanding that the prince fulfill his vow and marry his daughter Odile. And that by dawn, Odette will be a swan forever and never turn human again. Odette then thinks it is better to die now while there is still time, and rather than be swan forever, and the prince vows to die with her. She goes up to a cliff and throws herself over, and Rothbart turns into an owl and hovers over her in order to change her into a swan. But the prince rushes in, and together they throw themselves into the lake, and the owl falls, dead. Yeah, that's how it ends. I've never really been one for these Romeo and Juliet type endings either. But yeah, let's try to break down what this is trying to say. First of all the things to turn into, why a swan? Well, according to Tchaikovsky, who contributed to most of the story, he believed the swan represented womanhood in its purest form. Well, at least the white swan. And I can assume the black swan was meant to be the seductive side of womanhood. Beautiful, but also dark and deceptive. Honestly, I really wish people wouldn't view the world as black and white. But hey, this is the 19th century. I didn't write this stuff. I'm just interpreting it. And what I think the story means as a whole is that it's a test of devotion, which pretty much happens in most Beauty and the Beast type fairy tales, where some kind of betrayal is made from the human love interest or beauty. And the prince is young and he has never known love, and entranced by, well, another beauty, technically, he falls in love for the first time. And it's interesting how, unlike other human love interests, he is made aware of the curse from the beginning and gets to know the quote-unquote beast in human form. But in his naivety and youth, he immediately declares that he is willing to die for his new love, and not understanding just how much weight his words carry. Because he thinks too much of his love's beauty, he is easily tricked, and not really. Focusing on, hey, maybe you will notice that your love's acting a little bit different. It's not until he literally lays down his life for her that he is able to prove his love and free her, with her dying too. It's kind of extreme, I know, but I think what it's trying to say is that actions speak louder than words. I mean, it's pretty easy to make a vow, but you have to be ready to fulfill it, and that's the true meaning of devotion. Like, don't just say that you love someone, you gotta be able to show it, prove it, be there for that person. Though, maybe the whole both of them dying and the only way they could be together is in the next life is a bit extreme. That's one thing I never really liked about Romeo and Juliet, especially since you guys just met yesterday. Yeah, no suicide. Like if the one you love dies, don't die too, okay? Actually, I will talk about that a bit more in the next episode. Yeah, it is a very bleak way to present this message, and it might be why some modern productions will have a happier ending, with the prince slaying the evil genie and Odette and Siegfried dancing together and triumphantly. And they can kind of do that because mostly just gotta follow the music. They can make slight changes to the choreography. And I think the 1994 movie by Richard Rich, The Swan Princess, presents the message of showing devotion to the one you love better. Ironically, this too was a flop in the box office, but has gained a bit of a cult following, especially among us 90s babies. I certainly had this movie on VHS and watched it over and over again. Now I have it on DVD and watch it over and over again. In this movie, it's not a case of love at first sight. Princess Odette and Prince, well, his name's Eric in here rather than Siegfried, probably because that's harder for some kids to say. They grew up together, betrothed by their parents, who bring them together every summer in hopes that they will fall in love. Arranged marriage, but at least the parents had the decency to try to have the kids get to know each other. And they don't get along at first until they are fully grown up, and Eric, seeing how beautiful Odette has become, he decides, okay, I want to marry this girl now that she's totally beautiful. But just as he's about to arrange the wedding, Odette asks, wait, but what else? Is beauty all that matters to you? And Eric goes, what else is there? And as Roger says in the movie, he should write a book, How to Offend a Woman in 4 Words or Less. So, on the way back to her kingdom, Odette's entourage is then attacked by a great animal, resulting in her father's death. And the kingdom believes Odette to be gone, but Eric still searches for her. And sure enough, she's being held prisoner by the evil sorcerer Rothbart, who wants to marry her in order to rule his father's kingdom. Okay, I gotta say props to this movie for actually giving Rothbart a reason for turning Odette into a swan. I don't think that evil sorcerers just go around transforming people into animals all willy-nilly for no good reason. Maybe some do, but there's gotta be some motivation behind that, right? Now, how this spell works, Odette has to be on the lake to transform into a human and needs the moonlight to touch her wings. But when the sun comes up, she will turn back into a swan no matter where she is, so she has to stay at the lake if she ever wants to turn into human at night. And it's only if she agrees to marry Rothbart, or someone makes a vow of everlasting love to her, is the spell be able to be lifted. And Eric does find her and almost shoots her, thinking that she is the great animal, but when she transforms, she explains that he must make a vow and prove it to the world. And so he invites her to a ball that his mother had arranged, where all the royals of the world will be attending. Unfortunately, Rothbart overhears this and reminds Odette that on the night of the ball, there is no moon, so she won't be able to transform into a human. Rothbard disguises his hench girl to look like Odette, and when she arrives, she is in a black dress, as reference to the ballet's Black Swan look. And despite Odette tapping at the window in swan form, Eric ends up making a vow of everlasting love, as he says, to Odette. Those are his words, to Odette. And then Rothbard crashes in to reveal that the trick, and that since Eric made a vow to another girl, Odette will die. Eric runs back to the lake just as Odette turns into a human one last time, but she is dying, and he begs forgiveness and that the vow he had made was for her. And then he demands that Rothbard bring her back, and he says, "Yeah, I'll bring her back, only if you can defeat me." And then he transforms into a great animal, bird-like creature. Yep, he's always a bird type thing. And Eric, with the help of his friends, defeat him. And as he is weeping over Odette's body, he declares how he loves her for her kindness and her courage, and then she awakes, and then they kiss, and then they get married, happily ever after. So yeah, like in the ballet, this young prince is too focused on beauty. And that is what he must see past rather than the beastliness, which I think is a nice twist, because Beauty and the Beast is all about looking past appearances. And a character is presented with a person who is not very appealing physically. But people also need to remember that when you do have a beautiful person, you got to be able to look past that appearance as well. That there's more to someone than just their looks. But this movie, takes it a step further in showing that Eric must prove that he doesn't just love Odette for her beauty, but knowing her all his life and becoming aware of her kindness, courage, and determination, everything that makes her her. That's what he should have looked out for when he was presented with the fake Odette. I mean, he did say there was something different about her, but he didn't really go further on that, which is a little disappointing. But his love was proven in the end, not just with his words, but his willingness not to let her die. Not in a sacrificial way, like in the ballet, but fighting for her life. I think that's really true self-sacrifice, not just, oh, I can't live without you, I'm going to die, but, rushing in to save the person, knowing there's a possibility you might die. Like, that's real self-sacrifice. It's selfless and not selfish, because I think killing yourself just because you can't live without that person is very selfish indeed. And this movie had spawned even more direct-to-video sequels than I was aware of. If you were to watch any of them, I would watch the original trilogy, the first three, as they go very well together story-wise, and they show how Eric and Odette work as a team. And I like how they do this, that even after the marriage, trust and devotion will continue to be tested. Like, there's not just one test of trust in a relationship. There's always going to be trials and tribulations. Yeah, they will still persist after the wedding, and that's okay, as long as you're able to work through them and come out stronger as a result. The 2003 movie, Barbie of Swan Lake, focuses more on Odette as a heroine, destined to save an enchanted forest from the evil Rothbard and his daughter Odile. In that, he's kind of like I don't know, he looks more like a hawk than a crow or owl, really. And that she is only able to break the curse over the enchanted forest by finding true love herself. I'll be honest, I couldn't really get behind the couple in this movie as much, but I loved the inclusion of Tchaikovsky's music and of the ballet dances. I thought they were really well animated for an early 2000s CGI movie. It doesn't really share much from the ballet in terms of story, except probably with the swan curse and tricking the prince with a fake Odette, and the prince jumping in to save Odette with both of them being killed, but in the end of this one, they are both alive once Rothbard is defeated. As I've said, the most popular ballet has inspired other forms of media, including the psychological thriller Black Swan, about a ballerina who gets a bit too much into her swan queen role, and the anime series Princess Tutu, which I will cover next week. And that was also recommended by Anime Guy 1101. I would really recommend checking Princess Tutu out. If you have Amazon Prime, both seasons are on there, and it's worth the binge. And face it, what else do you have to do during this quarantine? Alright, so, anyone have any questions or comments they want read aloud? Remember, the minimum is 5 gold beans. Actually, my notes were a little bit shorter today. Only 16 pages rather than 20. Yeah, I keep going through notebooks really, really fast. I'm sorry, I'm killing so many trees. It's just easier to get my thoughts down by physically writing them rather than typing them. Alright, so, anyone have any last minute thoughts? Just saying, if you've got nothing to say, I will have no choice but to force you to marry me! If anyone's seen Princess Tutu, you'll know that reference. I'm kidding. I'm seeing no's here. I'm so offended. Alright, while you're thinking that, remember to tune in to the charity stream for No Kid Hungry on Sunday, May 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have your gold beans ready, ask questions, or make voice requests. Hopefully my voice will not go out before I have to sing. And remember, next week on Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, our episode will be on the anime Princess Tutu. And be sure to check out Amazon Prime. If you'd like to support this podcast, become a patron today. Click that green button if you're listening on Podbean, or follow the link in the description below if you are listening on YouTube. Alright, and we got a small donation from Bella Pink Savage. Hey GF, if you could be in a Broadway show, which show would you be in and who? Oh man, I have so many dream roles. Definitely one of my dream roles is to be Belle in Beauty and the Beast. Well, that's kind of obvious. I'm a big bookworm, and I'm doing this whole Beauties and Beasts thing. Some other shows, I kind of always want to be the Cat in the Hat in Seussical. I was in a production of Seussical, but I didn't get the cat, sadly. I would be Belle in Beauty and the Beast. I've always related to her. And that feels like the kind of role I want to be in. Okay. So, become a patron if you want to support this podcast, and be sure to tune into the charity stream on Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Well, let's raise some money for those kids who are not getting their free lunches. And also be sure to check out the merchandise on Redbubble. Masks are now available, and for every mask sold, another mask will be donated to Heart to Heart International. And also check out the Pride merch, as Pride Month is next month. And if you don't see your Pride flag, let me know. I'll try to remedy that as soon as possible. Just know it's not easy putting all those colors in and then sending them to the products. So it might take a while. Alright, but until then, remember that beauty is not everything in a person, and if you're going to make a vow, make sure you follow through, and don't make that commitment upon just meeting the person right off the bat, because I really doubt that you're really going to follow through on that. At least get to know the person a little bit more. Okay, until then, stay safe and stay healthy.